doesn't need to be from the next coconut tree. I like 40-foot spacing on coconuts. For plantations, they say 20 feet you can do. But 40-foot spacing makes it so the fronds are not touching each other. If the fronds are touching, they're banging against each other. It's constantly, slightly injuring the tree. Also, if you have a wide spacing like that, the trees go straight up. If you have trees that are really close together, they lean right out. So if you're going to try to climb those trees with the climber, it makes it extremely difficult or impossible. Also, coconut trees create really dappled shade. When they get that tall, if they're just dropping their fruit, you can pick it up off the ground. You don't have to do any work. You just walk up to the tree and pick up fruit off the ground. That's efficiency. Right?
Look up.
And if the tree is way up there, it's creating very light shade, so you can grow a lot of other things around underneath that tree. Okay, so we've got our coconut overstory, and then we've got our understory of ulu, avocado, all these other plants. Yeah.
In nature, it seems like coconut trees grow in clumps.
They do, because they drop their coconuts around them, and then that's what sprouts.
Yeah, but I'm sure that they're healthy.
They may be, but they may not be easy to climb. And they may create a lot of dense shade in a big clump like that that's not as usable to plant other plants in around.
How safe is it having your ulu trees under coconut trees?
It's nice to have it. It's nice to have it spaced out far enough. And also around coconut trees, I like to plant some kind of a bed around the bases, so you're not walking directly under it, like like an 8-foot radius all the way around the bed, so you're not constantly walking right underneath a coconut tree that could drop coconuts on. But
what would you put in the bed if you don't want to be?
Things that can take a coconut falling on them. Things I would eat, sure. There's lots of ground covers here. So we've got, let's see. So
Aren't you setting yourself up for being hit on the head if you're planting stuff that you're going to be down on your head in this harvesting?
I don't spend a lot of time. It's not something I spend a lot of time there.
If you worry about it, put your bike helmet on.
Put a bike.
Yeah, put a helmet on. There you go.
Wear a helmet.
I spend maybe like, a minute under the bed in a year.
My brother has a 70-foot area and he has a shield. He's using trash can leg because he can't walk under the tree without it.
And the bed will be long established before the coconut is.
Okay, so any other quick questions on coconuts? Yeah.
If people don't want to use a spike, I have access to a coconut husker. It's really easy to do from machete, so it's pretty much not damaging your body.
Okay.
So it allows people who are not physically able to pack it apart to use pullovers.
Yeah, he says he's got some kind of a special tool. You can talk to him about that. Okay, so moving on, ulu. Right, this is a great carb crop. Okay, lives a long time. They can get really tall. It's good to prune them to keep them harvestable. This goes with pretty much all the trees on this list. If you see something that says 50, 60 feet, doesn't necessarily mean you have to let it get that tall. Okay. There's also a link here to ulu propagation or breadfruit propagation or production guide, I think it's called, and it tells you how to prune the trees, how to use the fruit, all that information. So I highly recommend checking it out. It's a free download. Gives you all information on ulu.
But you should not sow ulu over 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Sorry.
that link was on your.
That link's on here in the back.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, try it.
So ulu, excellent. You can use the fruit. Cooked as a starch.
Or let it ripen on the tree full. Another way to use it.
You can let it ripen and cook it there. Raw, it's a purgative. So don't eat ulu raw. Unless you want to throw up.
The smaller kind, they get sweet.
Oh, the Samoan kind you can eat raw?
Yeah, after it gets soft.
After it gets really soft. Because I've had friends who were like, oh yeah, you can eat this, and then ate it, and then So it's mowing kind only, huh?
No.
Yeah, if
it's sweet.
I eat mine raw all the time.
You eat yours raw all the time?
Well,
If
I
it's
mean,
soft.
I'll do ulu pancakes,
But ulupeng, you're cooking it.
but the inside is still raw.
Anyways, let's move on. There's lots of ways to use them. Check out the production guide. It's excellent. There's just so much information on them.
Can you tell us what FS means and PHS?
It's in the beginning of the thing. It's on the page before.
What's his name? Okay, God, thank you.
So avocado, really great fat crop. Have different seasons. You need different trees for different seasons to get them year round, right? Also, another one you want to prune if you want to be able to harvest the fruit. If you let them drop, you can do that as well, but you got to have some soft ground, and you also got to beat the pigs to them if you got pigs and rats. Okay, so keeping your trees pruned down, 20, 25 feet, so you're still reaching with a picker. Grafted trees. I highly recommend getting grafted trees because you know what season it's going to be, you know the quality of the fruit. You can do seedling trees as well, but they're highly variable. Just because you plant the seed from this avocado, there's an excellent avocado, doesn't mean that's what that seed is going to produce.
And you've waited 5 to 10 years.
And you've waited 5 to 10 years to find out, right? So why put all that effort into a tree that, if you've got like a zone 5, you've got a lot of area, throw those pits out, sure, see what happens. If you have some bad ones, cut them down. But if you've got a limited area or in closer, I highly recommend grafted trees. But also make sure you're covering your bases of getting that year-round production.
Question?
Yeah.
Is there a difference between shiny and matte on the avocado when you're harvesting? I've heard different things about that.
I'm not really sure. Anybody else?
When they get mature, they're supposed to get more matte, and then the stem is supposed to start to turn brown.
Yeah.
And if you pick it before that, oftentimes it won't ripen.
So the stem turning brown, that's the main indicator that I've heard of before. For if the stem is brown, then you can pick it and it'll still ripen up. Whereas if it's a stem that's still completely green, probably won't.
In lower elevations, Kahalulu avocados are beyond amazing.
Lower elevations, Kahalulu, awesome. Fairly short season though, right?
It's worth it.
It's worth it though,
There are
yeah.
summer varieties.
Super high fat content. There's different fat contents for avocados as well. So this is another reason to get grafted trees, because you'll know what you're getting, because there's a huge range as far as the fat content in avocados.
When do you need to graft? Like, should I wait 5 years and then go, oh, these avocados aren't good, let me cut the tree and graft them?
You can. That's called top working. You can cut the top of that tree off and then graft to it. There's a couple different ways people do it. I don't want to get too far into that, but look it up. It can definitely be done. I've got a lot of trees on my place that are just seedling trees. Were there when I got there that I want to cut back and then graft onto different varieties.
And you can put multiple varieties on the same tree if you're limited on space.
Yes, you can put multiple varieties on the same tree if you have limited space.
Any suggestions on extracting the oil, avocado oil?
Extracting avocado oil, I don't. I would just eat the avocado and eat coconuts.
That's a great extractor.
Planet Hawai'i has the dates listed.
They have that. I don't have any in August.
They don't have any on August, September. August, September. Anybody? Avocado, August, September variety?
All of mine are on.
You have a little lull. Okay, so moving on with avocado. Papaya. Extremely versatile. You can use it green, you can use it ripe. Seeds are anti-parasitic. Let's see, what else? You can cook the green fruit as a vegetable. Yep.
Best way to harvest the seeds?
Best way to harvest the seeds, right out of here,
No, to replant.
to replant them. Cut it open and replant them.
But I can plant them fresh, dry them.
You can plant them fresh, you can dry them, doesn't matter.
I've
Yeah.
done a bunch of experimenting and I get the best production by taking the seeds out of the papaya and putting them in flats and planting them when the seeds are wet and gooey. And if I dry the
fresh?
seeds, the percentage is slower, they're weaker.
Gotcha. So
fresh
he's
is
saying he
better.
has a lot of, he has better results with fresh seeds. Other people share that? Yeah?
If you want to dry them, you want to take that sticky layer off because when it dries like shrink wrap, and that's why you don't get good germination. So
Okay.
you want to ferment them a little bit or pulse them in your Cuisinart with the bread blade, not the sharp blade,
Okay.
and get that, and then float them.
Okay,
and
so
get
she's
that
saying
out.
that it's a coating that's shrink wrapping onto them that makes them do that. So fresh is a good way to do that, or make sure that coat is off them.
When you cook them green, they're like potato.
When I cook them in green, they're kind of like chayote. Kind of like a squash, like
Oh, right.
like a young, very young squash.
You can bake them right. Like you can cut it in half and bake it right yourself.
Oh yeah, baking it ripe, she says, you can do as well. So the next one is cassava. Cassava is a root crop. It's another staple crop in many parts of the world. Cut it from stem cuttings. Just take this, stick it in the ground. That's it. It grows. Gets a big root. It's you can also eat the leaves, but you have to cook them. It's toxic. You got to cook it like at least 45 minutes. The root. It needs enough soil to put its roots out into because it'll get huge roots. It's a carbohydrate crop. Not nutrient-wise, it's not super great, but it's drought tolerant. So if there's a drought and your ulu drops all its fruit, which they will do during droughts, you've got this as a backup. And it's quite delicious, I find.
The cooking process is it's kind of poisonous. You know?
You've got to cook it. You've got to cook it 45 minutes at
And
least.
change the water.
No, you don't need to change the water.
Oh, just cook it 45.
Just cook it 45 minutes. I usually just boil it, and I cut it into pieces, and then boil it.
What's poisonous about it?
It's got hydrogen cyanide in it,
Oh, okay.
but it keeps most things from eating it, except for pigs. The roots and the leaves, but the main the carbs are in the root, and then the leaf is just a secondary crop. Highly recommend growing cassava, but it does need to be. If you got pigs around, it does need to be protected from pigs.
There's some way that if it's not grown in the right way, or there's a way that it's poisonous. That a neighbor of mine had it growing, and it was all like pushed up and everything. And somebody ended up coming, like she met somebody from her church. She said that, oh no, they were from Thailand or Philippines or something, and they were like, oh wow, don't eat it like that.
Huh.
Like it was all like a massive bush. And
Oh, interesting. I've never heard about that, but maybe she's saying that it.
Actually, there's a book in the library.
Okay.
Really nice. And
I think some people are sensitive to it and they just can't eat it too.
And maybe. So cassava, so pumpkin. Excellent ground cover. Local variety here. This will turn completely this tan color when it's completely ripe.
Do you have a name for that or other local varieties?
It's called a local variety.
Kabocha.
I mean, some people call it kombucha, but it doesn't really look like the kombuchas you find in the store very much. But you can also eat the young tips, high in calcium.
And the seeds?
You can eat the leaves
The seeds, you
too.
can also eat the seeds, yep, high in protein and oil, the seeds.
You can eat the leaves too.
Yeah, you can eat the young leaves as well. Yep.
the flowers too are really good.
The flower is good, yeah. Yeah. So pumpkin, great ground cover, great to do around other trees and orchard areas when they're getting established. You know, just let it spread.
What about the rotting when they're in a wet climate? We tried it before and they always rotted.
Anybody solutions about rotting pumpkins?
Actually, this variety is really good for that.
Yeah, this variety is good for that.
Oh,
Got a real hard
Just
shell.
put a board under them or something so
You
they're
put a
not
board
sitting
under
on-
them. I'm saying if you were to put a board under it,
Put a
while
board
it's starting to form,
Then, yeah, the bugs don't get bore up.
so the bugs don't bore up into it. That's a good idea.
Grow them on a trellis too.
You can grow them on a trellis too. Yeah, I've got them at my place. They're like growing up the other vines on my mango trees, like
Let the
got
weeds
pumpkins
grow
like
around
up
them.
here.
You let the weeds grow around them to keep the fruit flies off.
Yeah.
I have difficulty growing like pumpkin and squash. So it seems like it's doing well, and then, you know, flowers, and then nothing comes out of
And
it.
then nothing comes out of it. Some solutions about
Takes a
that?
long time.
Pollination.
There's
It takes a long
larvae.
time to
Yeah,
produce.
and some varieties are daylight sensitive, so they only produce male flowers in the short daylight.
I think that's what's going on with mine. 'Cause mine were bumper crop, bumper crop, bumper crop, and now just the last like couple months, I've gotten nothing.
So they just produce male, and then in
So-
the longer daylight, they start to produce the female.
Thank you. I don't know if you guys heard that. So coming into the winter, so is there a variety that doesn't do that?
The only one we've found so far, is the Tahitian squash, which is like the big butternut, and that seems to do okay in short daylight.
Okay, perfect. So variety again. So this Tahitian squash he has is saying that it's much less daylight sensitive. Okay, so it'll produce while these other ones aren't. So variety is super crucial with all these plants, with a lot of these plants.
If you're getting a lot of blossoms and no fruit, you can eat the blossoms too.
You can, but I mean a blossom, like how many blossoms does this thing need?
Stuff them.
Oh man.
I sometimes have them.
Oh, I'm not saying you can't eat them. It's just
Do you actually put the seeds, I mean, do you dig in and put the seeds in the ground, or do you just throw them around?
yes, I plant the seeds. You can plant them fresh. You can plant them dried. Doesn't seem that matter. Taro. So you guys everybody knows what taro looks like, right?
Yeah.
Taro, great crop. Again, needs protection from pigs. Likes a lot of mulch. Let's see, what else am I going to say about taro? You propagate it from a huli, which is the top part of the plant. Top of the stem, got the root. You just want to make sure you've got some brown root on the bottom of your plant. And there's a little new shoot in here that you don't want to damage when you cut it off up here. And you just plant this like that.
Ever
Yeah.
want to eat the leaves raw.
Don't ever eat the leaves raw, absolutely not.
Is that the soil level you do it? You do it at?
Yeah, this is a soil level. Yeah. So when you plant it, you plant it down here. When it grows, it will be like up here.
Okay.
It like raises up out of
Is there a
the raises
particular
up.
taro that you shouldn't eat? Is that one with the dark stem? I thought that one's just decorative.
One with the dark stem. I'm not sure.
There are some edible and some.
Some are more
this
for
is-
soy.
There's lots of different stem colors. Here's a couple taro leaves.
So that dark stem one is fine.
And then this one here, yeah. And then this is ape taro, which you eat the stem of. It can get huge. This is a really good famine crop. It takes a really long cook time on the stem. You'll have a corm like the stem will come up out of the ground. But it's a good famine crop because it'll live for many years. It won't, like taro roots will often rot. This thing has a stem that'll just keep growing. So it's a great famine food.
Does it have a root you can eat?
Ape, it's on the thing. It's on your handout. Ape taro.
Is there a root on the apple that you eat?
No, it's really the stem. The stem is like a corm on a taro kind of that grows up out of the ground. Let's see, another good famine crop that's on there is, I don't know how good it is. There's two others though that I want to mention is Canna. All around famine crops. Canna leaf here somewhere. There we go. So, Canna, this is edible canna. It has a root that looks kind of like ginger. It's a rhizome. It's not the most palatable thing, but it's a famine crop, right? If you got nothing else, it makes a good mulch crop. It's beautiful. Let's see, another one is tea root, Ti. The root is edible and was eaten in times of famine by the Hawaiians. And it's also a great fodder crop. You know, if you've got like rabbits, guinea pigs, goats, all love to eat tea leaves. Tea leaves, very useful plant.
Couple more famine crops.
Couple more famine crops, yeah.
Pilamali is actually pretty good.
Stink vine.
You can wash it out under hot water and then serve it.
The leaves or the?
Yeah, the leaves.
The leaves.
It's actually pretty good. I fed it to the family and didn't tell them what it was.
Oh.
And they liked it. And then hear that?
Hona is edible. And she's saying stink violet is edible as well.
But young noni leaves.
You wash it out. I mean, there's so many different leaf crops that are edible. I mean, I do eat hona once in a while, just because there's so much of it around. But I mean, there's a lot of leaf crops that are secondarily edible, like for like sweet potato, taro, cassava,
Noni.
noni. What else? What's other secondary leaves?
Yeah, we don't recognize.
Chaya.
And I lost.
Yep, edible hibiscus. So moving on to other plants on the list here, because we're about to do a tour here in just a minute. I want to wrap this up in like 5 minutes. The last 75 plants. But they're all right here. Let's see. So let's just run down, and I want to say something really quick about most of these. Chayote, the fruit, leaf tips, edible. You can use it like zucchini, really aggressive vine.
We
You can plant it up non-bearing trees to get them to be bearing something. Shaya. We've got shaya here. There's 2 different kinds. We've got this is the spiny chaya, and this is the non-spiny chaya. High protein, really good green, really easy to grow, drought tolerant. You can just take these and stick them in the ground, they'll grow. Okay, we've got edible hibiscus, which are wilted up, but you'll see them on the tour. Huge leaves, nutritionally similar to kale. Also extremely easy to grow, a little slimy, you can see that. But it's in the same family as okra, and that slime will cook right out of it. I really like this. The chaya and the edible hibiscus are probably the two greens that I consume the most. Let's see. Then we've got another green is this is Brazilian spinach or sisu spinach. I think I listed as sisu on my list. This is a great ground cover. Leaves are edible. They are high in oxalic acid when raw, so I usually cook those. The chaya has to be cooked. It's high in hydrogen cyanide. The edible hibiscus you can eat raw or cooked.
How long do you have to cook the chaya?
Just like 5 minutes.
Oh.
Yeah, short cook time.
What about katuk? Is it on the list?
Katuk. Yeah. Katuk here. Another good one, you can eat it raw or cooked.
But not in large quantities.
Not in very large quantities.
What are the leaves? Leaves?
There were some people who were juicing it as a diet craze, and they were getting some like liver damage, I think. But they're juicing large amounts of it raw. So adding a little bit in a salad, it's probably not going to hurt you. There's lots of plants that have anti-nutritive qualities. Okay, and cooking deactivates many of them.
What about the berries and stuff? Those are
You can eat the berries. I don't particularly like the berries. Good when they're young. Let's see. Okay, so going down the line, we've got citrus, lemons and limes for citrus. Produce like I've got a Tahitian lime tree. It always has fruit on it. There's none of this waiting for citrus season. It always has fruit. You know, so if you're going to have a citrus tree, why not have that? Oh, it's sour. Well, add some sugarcane to it.
Miracle berry.
Extremely productive.
Tangelo at lower elevations.
Tangelos are excellent. Just the quality of their fruit makes them worthwhile. So lemons, limes. especially Meyer lemons, Fuchsia limes. Lily koi, another extremely productive. It's like a weed. That's what we want. We want like food crops that are like weeds that are just plant themselves and just grow like mad. So what if you have to cut it? If it gets too aggressive, you have to cut it back. I'll take that problem. Let's see, moringa. I didn't bring a moringa with me, but it's highly nutritious. It's got a leaf a little bit similar to this. Gets into a large tree, extremely nutritious. And then we've got bread nut, which is similar to ulu, except it's all seeds. That can grow at higher elevation. So if you can't do ulu, you can still do bread nut. Same family. It may be called ulu nut as well.
Smaller?
No, they still get pretty big. Yeah.
It's kind of like an ulu with seeds in it.
It's like an ulu that's almost mostly seeds.
We've had it before.
You eat the seed?
You eat the seeds. Yep, you cook the seeds.
It's the original.
Yeah. And then we have jackfruit, which makes a lot of sweet fruit, but also the seeds of jackfruit you can eat. You can cook those down. They've got a little husk on them. You take that off. You can blend them up, make them into like a hummus type thing. Quite good. Produces massive amounts of fruit. You'll see one out in the orchard here when we do our walk in a minute. Jackfruit can do higher elevation as well. Yeah. And jackfruit also, you can cook the fruit when it's still young. You can make like people use it as like a meat substitute sometimes because the texture is like is kind of like stringy like that.
So you're talking about the flesh as opposed to the seed.
The flesh, everything, the seeds, everything. Well, it's still young before it's formed seed coats. You can just chop it all up. There's recipes online for like young jackfruit pulled pork. It looks exactly like it too. It's crazy.
You got to make sure you oil your knife.
Oil your knife, yes, thoroughly, and your pan too.
Wait, I'm sorry, so when you're talking about the jackfruit, how big is it when it's completely young for that meat replacement phase?
Fairly small.
Okay. And there's
Fairly
no
small.
seed development in it?
There is still seed development, but it hasn't formed because they form this little like tough layer around the seeds. So you just want to get it before, and you just may need to do a little experimentation. I haven't used it too much. Yeah.
How do you know when jackfruit's ripe?
Smell, color, fruit flies flying around it. Let's see. Macadamia nut. Another great one. Again, you do have to beat the pigs to them though. If you're letting them fall on the ground.
They take the macadamia nut raw from the tree?
Yeah, crunch, crunch, crunch.
Well, you dry
Yep.
it. Good dry.
They'll eat them right off the ground. It's really loud. You can hear them crunching on it. So we got uhi, the Chinese yam, which I didn't bring a root of, but I did bring a seed of it. Can't find it. I'll show you later. But it's an aggressive vine that'll die back when it's formed its roots, and they can form huge roots. It's a really underused crop. The uhi or Chinese yam, and there's several different varieties. There's one variety that forms a long tuber like this. There's some varieties that form, they look almost exactly like potatoes, and then there's some that form like this kind of like multi-lobed, weird alien-looking root. But I highly recommend getting the different varieties. Mountain yam is what one of the small one goes by. The name, common name. Then we have air potato, which is in that same family. Produces aerial tubers. Okay, so it produces these on the vine. Same family. Not nearly as aggressive as a vine. Can take a little bit of shade. And there is a wild version of this that has circular fruit that is not edible, and it's highly invasive. So this one has earned a bad reputation because of that wild cousin, the non-cultivated type. Okay, so if it's like a ball, That is not what you want. That is a weed. This thing, see how it's weird and angular? And sometimes they'll be really odd shapes too and have different lobes. They look kind of like livers. That's the one you want. And just get it from somebody who has been growing it for food, and then you'll know you have the right one.
What do you do with that?
You can eat it like potato. No, I don't believe so.
I don't think so, because I bought some from somebody and I knew nothing about it, looked it up, and it said it can be very toxic.
Yeah, you want to cook it. It doesn't take very long to cook it though. Let's see. Katuk, we talked about katuk. Katuk you can do from woody stem cuttings. You want to use the older wood sections of that. Just plug it into the ground. We talked about sisu spinach, the low ground cover. Again, that can be done from very simple cuttings. And then we've got ginger and turmeric that I included in the top 25, just because of their seasoning qualities or medicinal qualities. I couldn't imagine not having them around in my diet regularly.
So how do you plant ginger? Do you just take pieces of the...
Yeah, ginger, you take pieces, like 2-inch sections of the root. You want to cut them and you want to let them heal over. Ideally, you want to let them heal over so it's not wet when you put them in the ground, just like a day or overnight even. And then turmeric, you can just use the smaller sections of root, or you can use the mother root. Koi, another extremely productive. It's like a weed. That's what we want. We want like food crops that are like weeds that are just plant themselves and just grow like mad. So what if you have to cut it? If it gets too aggressive, you have to cut it back. I'll take that problem. Let's see, moringa. I didn't bring a moringa with me, but it's highly nutritious. It's got a leaf a little bit similar to this. Gets into a large tree, extremely nutritious. And then we've got a bread nut, which is similar to ulu, except it's all seeds. That can grow at higher elevation. So if you can't do ulu, you can still do bread nut. Same family.
Ulu nut?
Maybe called ulu nut as well.
Smaller?
No, they still get pretty big. Yeah.
It's kind of like an ulu with seeds in it.
It's like an ulu that's almost mostly seeds.
You've had it before.
To eat the seed?
You eat the seeds. Yep, you cook the seeds.
It's the original.
Yeah. And then we have jackfruit, which makes a lot of sweet fruit, but also the seeds of jackfruit you can eat. You can cook those down. They've got a little husk on them. You take that off. You can blend them up, make them into like a hummus type thing. Quite good. Produces massive amounts of fruit. You'll see one out in the orchard here when we do our walk in a minute.
How is the jackfruit up on the higher elevation above?
Jackfruit can do higher elevation as well. Yeah. And jackfruit also, you can cook the fruit when it's still young. You can make like people use it as like a meat substitute sometimes because the texture is like is kind of like stringy like that.
So you're talking about the flesh as opposed to the seed.
The flesh, everything, the seeds, everything. Well, it's still young before it's formed seed coats. You can just chop it all up. There's recipes online for like young jackfruit pulled pork. It looks exactly like it too. It's crazy.
You gotta make sure you oil your knife.
Oil your knife, yes, thoroughly, and your pan too.
Wait,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, so when you're talking about the jackfruit, how big is it when it's completely young for that meat replacement phase?
Fairly small.
Okay. And there's
Fairly
no
small.
seed development in it?
There is still seed development, but it hasn't formed because they form this little like tough layer around the seeds.
Yep.
So you just want to get it before, and you just need to do a little experimentation. I haven't used it too much. Yeah.
How do you know when jackfruit's ripe?
Smell, color, fruit flies flying around it. Let's see. Macadamia nut. Another great one. Again, you do have to beat the pigs to them though, if you're letting them fall on the ground. We got uhi, the Chinese yam, which I didn't bring a root of, but I did bring a seed of it. can't find it. I'll show you later. But it's an aggressive vine that'll die back when it's formed its roots. And they can form huge roots. It's a really underused crop. The uhi or Chinese yam. And there's several different varieties. There's one variety that forms a long tuber like this. There's some varieties that form, they look almost exactly like potatoes. And then there's some that form like this kind of like multi-lobed, weird alien looking root. But I highly recommend getting the different varieties. Mountain yam is what one of the small one goes by. The name, common name. Then we have air potato, which is in that same family. Produces aerial tubers. Okay, so it produces these on the vine. Same family, not nearly as aggressive as a vine. Can take a little bit of shade. And there is a wild version of this that has that circular fruit that is not edible, and it's highly invasive. So this one has earned a bad reputation because of that wild cousin, the non-cultivated type.